Welcome to the Acuprosper podcast, where we get smart, real, honest, and empowered about creating a thriving acupuncture clinic. I'm Katie Hale, your host. I'm an acupuncturist, herbalist, and ABORM certified fertility acupuncturist with a clinic in Denver, and I'm the founder of Acuprosper, which is my side passion project where I teach acupuncturists how to start, grow, and market their acupuncture clinics. And I'm the author of the book, Acupuncturists Mean Business. In season 2 of this podcast, it's all about passing the mic to others, specifically to a few of the many acupuncturists out there that I admire and feel inspired by. We are going to get a look inside their journeys, their practices, struggles, mindset, marketing, and more. We're getting real, and we are having some hard and honest conversations about everything from burnout to cultural appropriation. My goal is to show that there are many paths up the mountain, that there's not one singular definition of success or way to get there, and to break down the taboos about discussing business in our healing field and our livelihood. If you'd like to see the video version of this podcast, you can find it on the blog at acuprosper.com. And it is pretty cool to see these acupuncturists' faces light up as they talk about their practices and their passion. Thank you for being here and for making this a safe space to share and explore these journeys and ideas. I hope it shows us what's possible and helps us to feel connected and supported. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Today I have a guest I'm so excited about. She's a friend of mine. She was a student of mine many, many years ago. Her name is Katie Hale, and she's an acupuncturist here in Denver. And she is the founder and acupuncturist at True North Holistic Medicine. And she specializes in women's health. And Katie's also taking classes right now in intuitive eating. And I really want to talk to her about that and the health at every size movement as well. So Katie, thank you so much for coming on today and taking this time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Katie. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. And it's so fun to get to talk.
I'm excited to nerd out with you because I feel like you and I have all the same interests.
Me too. Me too. So first, will you tell us a little bit about your acupuncture practice and what it's like and how you discovered acupuncture? Kind of like start with the beginning of your journey.
Okay. So I used to be a speech pathologist back 15, 18 years ago. And honestly, I got super burnt out. I was working for CU and doing research at home or at homes, and I got just really drained and eaten alive, kind of as a 110% empath back then. Also, just the way that speech pathologists are regulated and things like that just felt really limiting for me. And so I decided to go back to school and actually applied at the counseling program at CU Denver and then acupuncture school. And I was had this epiphany where I was if I become a counselor, I'm going to have the same things potentially. So loved my journey with acupuncture, really helped me. Like many of us with digestive issues, I think really brought us into it. Did that, went to school, and then I slowly started my practice. I was lucky enough to kind of ease into it and build my practice slowly. So I started off on my own and I've always been on my own. And then 4 years ago, I helped start a collective practice of practitioners. So we have chiropractors, a massage therapist, and a pelvic floor PT, and potentially taking on some other people, called Well Set in the Highlands. And we specialize mostly in women's health. And I also have been, with Katie's help in the beginning, hired an acupuncturist. And so that's been really great. And I'm actually looking for another one, which is lovely. So it's been a gradual process. And I remember back in the day talking to some successful acupuncturists I knew when I was a new practitioner, and them just being be patient, it takes time, it takes time, it takes time. And really that has been how it is for me. And I'm sure same with you, Katie. And some really big things for me, I think that I tell new practitioners too is I think finding a good network of referrals and people that you can, connect with or have similar practitioner styles, I think is super important with building your practice. I mean, that's like a huge majority, I feel like, of who I've gotten throughout the years. So yeah.
And that's so nice that you have that network with WellSet.
Yeah, it is
all those
nice.
like-minded practitioners. That's awesome. I didn't realize you helped to start that. That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So Jace Busick and he started it, and anyway, it asked me to join back in the very beginning. We kind of been in it since then. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So how many treatment rooms do you treat out of? Do you work out of?
I do 2, which I love. I've always treated out of 2, which I feel very lucky that I've been able to do that. So we're potentially adding another room or expanding slightly eventually. So that will be really great too.
So you're going to try to do 3 patients like an hour?
Oh God, no,
Okay.
not at all. I'm good with 2. There's no way. No, I'm just doing it so more practitioners can come and work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so, and you have an associate and you're looking to add a second. Are they independent contractors?
Yes. And I took your course, listened to your course on that, which was so helpful. Kind of weighed the pros and cons, talked to some other small business owners that have employees and kind of looked at that. I potentially might take them on and then just pay like their payroll taxes, but we'll see as time goes on. But as a contractor, yes, which has been great.
Yeah, that's so great. And it feels so good, right? To create work for other acupuncturists and make it so that they can do what they love. And
absolutely. No, I love it so much. And she's been such a great addition, and she focuses more on like sports medicine and facial acupuncture. So totally different than me. So it's been great. Yeah.
And so you specialize in women's health, right?
Absolutely.
And did you always know you wanted to specialize in that in school, or was it like a later decision?
Katie, I think you graduated a couple of years before me.
Mm-hmm. I graduated in 2011. Yeah. When did you graduate?
2012.
You were like my first class of teaching that I ever taught.
It was so great. I think for us, like, you think about the time that we graduated, I just feel like there's been such a big movement towards women's health in general as healthcare providers, so needed. And then, being holistic providers, I think it just kind of falls into your lap in a way. And then you get it. Like, I also became a mom, and, after only a couple of years of practicing, and just really got passionate and started to nerd out on periods and hormones and all the things. So and I just think it's so needed to have
more support around every stage of that.
Right. And I know you do a ton of IVF and IUI and fertility stuff, and it's just so mind-blowing how often, like, I feel like we probably just hold people's hand and bring clarity and listen and really support, because there's just like such a big problem in the women's health world.
So true. So
I could talk about that forever too, but we don't need to.
So what's your like ideal, being a mom and also having associates, what's your personal like ideal number of patients per week, do you think?
Yeah, it's shifted. I think my ideal, I see about, I to be totally, just honest, I was pretty tapped out for a while, and I am so blessed. And I was seeing about 60 patients a week, which felt way too much. And I was really drained. It was really just hard, as, with what we do, it's just a whole nother level. And I just felt like my quality of care wasn't where I wanted it to be. So when I hired Erin, that helped a lot. And so now I am seeing closer to like 50, 45 a week, which feels so much better. Yeah. And I just transitioned to not working 4 days a week, only 3, but big days. And that feels really good too. Yeah.
Nice. Totally. Yeah. I know. I love 3 days a week. So good. Well, thanks for sharing that. And at WellSet, do you have a receptionist that you guys share?
We have 2 receptionists that work all the time, since we have quite a few providers, and they help with scheduling and checking people in and out, which is so nice. It's huge.
Yeah.
And I did it forever, and it's been lovely.
That's so nice to have. Awesome.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned, I was going to ask you like what you do mostly to get patients in. It sounds like referrals from other providers is a huge part.
Yeah, I would say that, and we're pretty rooted in the community, I would say. So I have a good amount of, I'm sure like you know, like OBGYNs and midwives and stuff like that. Also like, you know, some of the fertility clinics refer, which is lovely. And then of course, just like word of mouth. I mean, my practice is in the Highlands, and the Highlands Moms group, like,
oh yeah,
it's huge. Like they just like pop on there and they're like, come see me. So, you know, it's like, not, I don't say that, but a patient does. And it's just so lovely, like the deep rooted community. And I think that's really big. Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's
from patients. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so did you ever experience the imposter syndrome?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. For sure. I feel like still sometimes it's like, wow, I put these needles here and person feels better. Like, this is amazing. Or like they get pregnant. I mean, absolutely. I feel like I'm always learning. And as a provider, like, I mean, we're constantly changing and moving, and we have to kind of keep up. I don't want to say keep up with the times, but, you know, learn and grow. And I feel like I'm constantly feeling that way, like in a lot of ways. Definitely better, but, you know, I think it's just challenging myself more and more. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
What about you, Katie?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I think every time I ask myself to like, to change, to grow more or grow into a new direction, you feel that. I feel that sense of
right? Oh,
fear.
So scary. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's like the perfect segue into talking about this new thing that you're studying. So,
yay!
I want to hear all about it. So you're studying intuitive eating. Is it an intuitive eating coaching program, or like what?
Yeah, great question. So it's through Evelyn Tribbley, who is like the OG intuitive eating guru. She started it back in the 90s. And it's a intuitive eating counseling license, and it's for healthcare providers. So that's really lovely. She's an amazing, very charismatic, smart lady. Anyway, so it's a healthcare provider program to become an intuitive eating counselor. So there was a lot of dietitians, nutritionists, some PAs, NPs, things like that in the group, which is lovely. And there's no acupuncturist in my realm, but I think that I know there are a few acupuncturists out there that are intuitive eating counseling certified as well. So I actually will be done in 3 weeks, which is exciting.
Oh, wow. Done. How long is the program total?
You know, it's kind of, you can take it as it comes, but it took me about, you know, working full time. It took me about 9 months. Yeah. Super great program, really accessible and easy, very affordable, which was lovely. So I really have enjoyed it. Yeah.
So what made you decide to do this, to go into intuitive eating?
Yeah. So I think unconsciously in the last 5 years, I've kind of been moving towards it. With some bouts of not, I will say. So a little background on like my intuitive eating journey. I used to struggle with an eating disorder when I was younger, and then I got uber quote unquote healthy for a while. I was definitely orthorexic for sure, and like, I don't know if you know what orthorexia is, but it's basically, just to clarify, you know, like someone that kind of overworks out, you know, eats healthy, those type of things.
It's like, you know, too careful about what they eat, about what they're eating, right?
Yeah. And you know what's really interesting, Katie, is that, you know, a lot of the time patients come to us because their stomachs hurt or they have digestive issues, and we try to fix and find, as providers, as also for the patient, like what is happening, in our bodies, and trying to support that through nutrition, which I love nutrition. But then it causes also a lot of stress for a lot of people. So, majority, I would say, of women that walk through my door, have some form, I would say, of disordered eating. And let me define that. So disordered eating can mean like thinking about your next meal all the time. It could mean like, I can have this, but I can't have that. And, overthinking their food, a lot. And I think it's really actually been a challenging program for me because I really do love and believe in nutrition. But what I've kind of come to is, and I know you agree with this, Katie, is adding foods into diets instead of taking away, I think is really huge. So I just have felt like there has been this huge shift where, like, especially in Denver, where people are very health conscious, that there's a lot of disordered eating that's happening, basically. And I just saw this big gap, and I was like, man, I really feel like I need to learn more so I can support patients more through this process.
Yes.
And then, to add on top of that, I also am a HACE provider, which is health at every size, which can go hand in hand with intuitive eating, but basically, it comes down to not discriminating against any type of body type or anything like that. And as we know, with healthcare these days, I mean, people get discriminated against all the time. Get, anything like race, being a woman, like all of these things. And, and then you add that phobia on top of that. And there are so many patients that are not getting the care they need. And I can't even tell you how many heartbreaking stories I hear from patients and don't even get me started on the fertility world, because that's like absolutely, and that's what I'm mostly in, but like patients getting turned away because of their BMI and to not, get a fertility treatment. Right. I've had patients get, as you know, Katie, like get misdiagnosed with PCOS, and then they just they have something completely different going on, but they don't listen or hear, and
yes,
they think, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I feel like you just said so much there that I want to be like, wait, slow down. Let's talk
more
about each of those things, because it's so good. No, it's so good. Right. So for people that don't know, the health at every size movement is trying to break down that stigma that everybody, but a lot of healthcare providers have, that you can, just because someone's overweight doesn't necessarily mean they're unhealthy, eating too much, eating the wrong things, not exercising. And how often doctors will say, well, you just need to lose weight, right? Yep. And they don't even explore, in the fertility world, I see it all the time. They don't even explore their, the underlying causes. They just say you need to go lose weight, which then, right, leads them down, it becomes this loophole of more disordered eating even less. I feel like often my overweight patients actually need to eat more.
Absolutely. 100%.
It just snowballs into this worse problem, and it places the blame on them. And I think it's a lazy cop-out non-diagnosis to just tell somebody that it's their weight, Yeah. So
absolutely.
I want, I love that you're talking about this, because I want more acupuncturists, if they don't know about it, to know about the health at every size movement, and also to explore what we might have as our own biases, right?
I know.
I think in my first few years in practice, did you ever do this, where I would assume if a patient was thin or looked fit, that meant they were eating healthy and we didn't need to talk as much about things? Or if they were overweight, that it meant there was definitely dampness, or definitely certain, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, you just can't make those assumptions at all.
I completely agree with you, Katie. Absolutely. And I was totally going to talk about damp and phlegm and all of that type of stuff. And and so I can't even but it's interesting absolutely, even in any medicine, the bias that we have. And so, as acupuncturists, I think it's more important than ever for us to like, people come see us because they're not being heard or seen otherwise. And it's like, you add this component on there, like, this is what is needed and absolutely necessary, for as a provider. Like, a lot of the times, I mean, it's changing, but, we're kind of people's last ditch effort. And it's like, man, like being more open and caring and listening to actual symptoms and pulses and all the things without our bias. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I know. Yeah. And
that's
often go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Katie.
you go.
I was just going to say, oftentimes it's very genetic. And so, like we can kind of look at it from a Chinese medicine standpoint, but like a lot of the time it's very genetic. And, like, as you know, Katie, like you and I and another person can be sitting next to each other, all eating the exact same thing and look totally different. And so, yeah. And I actually, I would say majority of my larger body patients are eating way too little.
Yes.
And unfortunately, doctors keep telling them to eat less. And, it's like this like stigma where they're like, you're not working hard enough and like doing these things. And it's like, it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Right.
Yeah.
And the
Mm-hmm.
whole like calories in, calories out just leads people to like continue eating less. And I think it can be genetics, but also diet culture that is causing the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Diet. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And causing people to eat less and suppressing metabolisms and yeah.
Yep. And in intuitive eating, they talk about that women, in order to have a healthy cycle, we have to be getting 2350 calories a day.
And they're telling people to have like 1200, which is what like a toddler.
Yeah,
needs.
Right. And so, in the women's health world, like, we could dive into like the lack of periods, or like regulating, or, they're not ovulating because they're not getting, enough calories and things like that. And just, it really just comes back and roots more into body acceptance too, is really what intuitive eating is. Body acceptance, kindness, that type of stuff. And it doesn't mean like there are not times where you have a hard day or you shame your body or anything like that. I mean, there's still hard days for me, and like it's just life, it's just real. But like being more gentle and being more like, okay, like I'm going to listen to my body because I'm so hungry today. And as we know, Katie, it changes so much with our cycle, and intuitively just trusting and being like, man, my body really needs this today. And like, having that. I think the challenging part too with the intuitive eating stuff is it is a lot of counseling. It's a lot of counseling because we all have such, like, we look at your past, we look at like how you were with your parents, like all these type of things. So it's really needed and not talked about. Yeah.
So how do you work that into how you practice? Is it just part of an acupuncture treatment, or do people book a separate service?
Yeah. So I'm still figuring it out. So I incorporate it with like the nutritional stuff. And I the thing with intuitive eating is like people have to kind of be ready and open to it. So I never push that on them. I am just like, hey, this is what I do. If there's any point you want to dive further, let me know. So I incorporated some into my practice. We always talk about nutrition, right? And things like that. But then I think I'm going to start doing just online calls on Wednesdays, actually. So I'll still be working from home and doing more people who want a more in-depth counseling session. We can do that. And then potentially then turning it into like more like online platforms if I get ambitious enough, which we'll see.
Cool.
So I don't know. Yeah. So we'll see how it all works out. I'm taking some time off around Thanksgiving, so I'll have some time to set things up more. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you mentioned being a health at every size provider. So I didn't realize that was something you could be like, you're like certified in or something?
No. So there's like a health at every size. What is it called? I can't remember the name of the website, but you can sign up on there and be, HAES aligned. So that's just saying like, hey, like I believe in these views. I support no matter what, because a lot of my patients I've received like found me on there because they want to see someone that's going to really listen and hear and not just tell them to lose weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So, I've been thinking about this intuitive eating thing a lot and how it mixes with Chinese medicine, because I sort of feel like Chinese medicine is such a good, what's the word? Like, it was like the original intuitive eating in a way. And I love how non-diet culture-y our nutritional views are, and how we are like, you actually need to eat enough to support the spleen. Undereating hurts the spleen, right? And balancing the flavors. And while the one thing that doesn't seem necessarily intuitive eating aligned is like our views on dairy, how I think it can be like dairy's bad, but everything else is like grains in moderation help the spleen. Thinking about how everyone is always vilifying gluten and dairy. You got to cut out these food groups, which feels like a good segue, a bad segue into, orthorexia and disordered eating oftentimes, and how we as healthcare, as acupuncturists, can sometimes accidentally add to that fire of like, well, you need to cut this out. Definitely don't do dairy. But like when you look at the Chinese medicine texts, they actually are really not very diet culture-y. They're very much intuitive and well balanced. That's my view. How do you reflect on that?
I know I would say it's really tricky. I do think that you're right on with I think it is in a lot of ways very intuitive eating based, but there are I think that we have to remember the food rules is a big thing that can be a big issue as far as intuitive eating and trusting yourself. And so I think that that's something I don't have necessarily an answer for as far as if someone needs to take out dairy or gluten. Now, what I would say actually is that I would ask the patient how they actually feel when they eat the food. So, how some people will have yogurt and it will hurt their stomach or, whatever, depending on their bodies. And so I would actually start to ask them to see how the food actually makes them feel. So when because people will be like, well, Katie, I can't eat this food. I feel terrible. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see how you do. If you're really relaxed, you make something really yummy, that sounds super good in the moment, and you sit down and you really enjoy and take that food in. How does your body actually feel after that? And so there's a big thing in intuitive eating that they talk about, once we have okay, let's just say dairy, I can't have dairy, and then they have dairy, the mind kind of takes over the gut. And so it's hard to say what is actually happening, if it's in the mind or in the gut. And so that's why kind of taking the time to slow down and eat and be how does this actually feel? Right. And I also think that it's a slippery slope too as providers, where it's okay, take this out and that out, and I've 110% done this, Katie, 100%. Then it can tumbleweed, and then people start and they start being oh, I can't even go out to dinner anymore, or that type of stuff. And I think that people still need to live their lives. Yes. Right. Yes. And I'm sure you're like this too, Katie, where you'll be things in moderation, or I still want you to go out and enjoy your weekend or whatever. But if you're at home, these are some ideas. And I know you do this too, where it's probably a gentle shift where you're oh, how about you use goat cheese on your salad instead of cow's dairy or whatever, gentle shifts like that, which I think is so rooted in Chinese medicine, that more gentle nutrition. So yeah, interesting to try to figure this out, because I think for us it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like sometimes I think like with autoimmune diseases, sometimes it seems like like the autoimmune, the AIP diet can be really helpful
Oof,
sometimes, but it's
yeah.
so restrictive and
Yes.
so hard and should be, in my belief, really short term if used at all. But then in most of the other cases, I think strict rules are not
I
always
know.
helpful. And as you said, it's a slippery slope. Yeah. Um, have you heard about the Milkshake Study where they gave
Yeah.
like the group of people a milkshake and they were like told some people it was like really bad for you and fattening and high calorie, and some people that was like this protein good for you shake, and then they measured their glucose reactions, and the people who thought
Yeah.
that it was bad for you had way higher glucose readings than the people who thought it was good for you. Like how powerful our mind
Yeah.
is, even on our how we're responding to our food, is so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So interesting, Katie. But it's like it's all what we do in Chinese medicine with the mind body, right? We're always treating that. And so, I mean, it's actually ultimate, obviously I love Chinese medicine. So yeah.
I know. I totally think it's the ultimate too. And it argues why, that the mind body connection argues why we should like help people, as you said, tune in, give themselves permission to have flexibility and enjoy, and eat without tracking, and
Yeah.
make sure their meals are satisfying and bring joy, right? And that I think thinking about food all day long is actually a sign that something might be off,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's tricky, Katie. Like food and what you put into your body and how your relationship with food is so near and dear to people. And so, I mean, we experience that, and we've known that for a long time as providers, but challenging what they call the food police, or challenging like this is like such different thinking than what is like common, especially in somewhere like Denver. It's really challenging, and people, it's like such a gradual, slow learning process.
Yeah. Learning, unlearning process. Totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I saw that like food has become like a moral decision in some people's minds in a way. It's like a morality thing now, food. When I saw that when I post on Instagram about like meat and like how I think meat is actually really healthy and good for women who are trying to conceive, and get attacked by like the vegan crowd. And it becomes this really big, it's like this morality argument now, not in terms of like animal treatment, but in terms of like, I'm a good person because I'm eating healthy, or I'm a bad person because I'm not eating healthy.
Yeah. Yes. There's like, it is deeply rooted in privilege.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I know you have to go soon. So I want to, do you have any like, the reason I really want to have this conversation is I'm all about helping us and myself trying to reflect on our biases that we come into practice with, and I think the big thing is about just a reminder to acupuncturists to think about any biases we might have around food and body size too, and how we can be more gentle, loving healthcare providers. Do you have any big, things or wisdom that you want to share about that beyond what you already have?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of circling back to what we've already said, like we truly are providers that are, supposed to take symptoms and pulses and tongue and do all of the things with an unbiased and look at the person constitutionally. So just rooting to that and trying to remove your own biases. Another thing is, I think it's also really important to make your clinics more accessible for larger bodies too. I've gotten like some bigger beds and things like that, and making sure that we're really supporting and making everyone comfortable as possible.
Yes.
I think that's a really big thing. But I think that it literally just comes down to treating people constitutionally for who they are, which is what we do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I mean, Katie, like, how often are we just like providing quality care and like listening ear and providing some like love into someone's life, right? Like healthcare is so challenging and hard, like, you know, through fertility treatments and things like that. And let alone like adding, you know, being discriminated against. It's just, I think majority of acupuncturists are like this. So like we truly care and we practice differently.
Yeah.
So just rooting back to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
No.
So well said. I love that. Like holding our patients in like unquestioned positive regard, you know, and not bringing food judgments into that. Yeah. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Will you let people know where they can like connect with you? And
Sure. You can find me at truenorthdenver.com. And then I also am on the website. And then I am also on Instagram under True North Holistic Medicine. And feel free to connect, email, anything like that. And we'll see kind of what comes about as far as my potential, like taking on new clients for that and stuff like that. So
awesome. I'm excited.
But thank you, Katie. I'm so excited to talk to you. I could talk about this stuff all the time, anytime.
Me too.
Like women's health stuff, like, I'll like nerd out anytime.
Awesome. I love that. It's so great to connect with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely.
Really
thank you, Katie.
I hope that as you work to make the world a better place, you also prosper, my friend.